If you can't already tell, today we are grave digging into the spooky pop culture movie that has kicked off 2024 with a bang, Lisa Frankenstein. I asked and you all answered, and you did not want to wait for your review until the movie's about to hit streaming. So today we're going to get started with a quick spoiler-free review, and then we're going to get into all of the spoiler-filled details afterwards. But don't worry, I'll give you a warning.
If you need a friend, don't look to a stranger. You know in the end, I'll always be there. And when you're in doubt, and when you're in danger, take a look all around, and I'll be there.
Four. Double.
If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Mandy Spooks, and this is my spooky oasis. If you can't already tell, we kind of fangirl over spooky pop culture year-round around here. If spooky pop culture is your thing, then I have some great news for you, because Lisa Frankenstein is just the beginning of what I think is going to be a pretty great year for us spooky ghouls. And by that I mean, if you remember back in 2022, we had a very exciting time with Wednesday premiering. We had Hocus Pocus 2. We had, unfortunately, the end of Halloween that did not turn out as well, but it was a pretty iconic year for spooky lovers like ourselves. But this year is going to top that even more, because we kicked off with a beautiful Halloween story of Lisa Frankenstein. We have Ghostbusters coming up. We have Beetlejuice 2. I suspect that we are going to get Hocus Pocus 3 this year, and we also have the second season of Wednesday, and that's just what we know about so far, because you all know they love to surprise us as the year goes along. So today we're going to be fangirling over Lisa Frankenstein, so I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it. According to IMDb, the summary of Lisa Frankenstein is a coming-of-age love story about a teenager and her crush who happens to be a corpse. After a set of horrific circumstances bring him back to life, the two embark on a journey to find love, happiness, and a few missing body parts.
That hand is gonna do terrible things.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a vibe, right? Something I always like to kick off reviews with is like the Rotten Tomato score for some reason. I don't know why. I don't really usually agree with it, but so far the audience score for this movie is 82%, which actually sounds pretty accurate in my opinion. I think it's pretty spot on so far. I have seen that the movie has gotten a lot of negative reviews so far, especially because it was written by Diablo Cody, and it didn't quite hit the mark people were expecting based on what we've seen with Jennifer's body. And I am going to talk a little bit more about that in the spoiler-filled part, but for the spoiler-free part, I really wanted to just focus on what I think this movie got right. The set design, the costume design is absolutely amazing. It was so good that your ghoul could not find the right hat for the perfect dress I already had waiting. Like literally, I was watching the movie and I was like, what are the odds that I already have a dress for this? But then I tried finding a hat that matched perfectly with Lisa Frankenstein's. It was like a white or a black straw bucket hat with like a white flower, and I could not find it for the life of me, and unfortunately I'm not the thrifting kind of girl. So if anyone spots one in Colorado, let me know so I could complete the look perfectly. But yeah, the set design and costume design were absolutely gorgeous, so fun. It was really nice to see the 80s come back to life, especially like with a spooky atmosphere. And then I also really enjoyed the cinematography. If you're a Tim Burton ghoul, then you will definitely enjoy this. It gave, for me, it was giving like fun, positive Edward Scissorhands vibes. I feel like Edward Scissorhands is a beautiful movie, but it is a little heartbreaking at the same time. So this one definitely had a lot of like the pop, like the colors, especially when you see Lisa Frankenstein's actual house. It had like the colorfulness, the neons, but like with the high contrast of blacks. So it definitely had the Tim Burton vibes. I really, really loved the music. For me, like the music just set the tone for the entire movie from the trailer. I was really nervous that when we saw the trailer, it wasn't going to really like match the movie. Like I thought it was just giving this 80s vibe to reel us in and trick us, but it actually held very true to the music they were using, the vibe, everything. It is definitely an actual period piece for the 80s. And something that I really, really appreciated about this movie was talking about death. I think as a spooky girl, especially in this community, I feel like death is one of the reasons why the spooky community gets a lot of stigma behind it. It also causes a lot of anxiety for people. And I think that this movie really brings to light not only grief and mourning someone you love, but also there's like a really great part where Lisa Frankenstein talks about how people fear death and why they fear it. And I think it's just like a really healthy conversation to have. And I think that that is the root cause of why the spooky community gets so much hate. It's like kind of taboo to still be spooky, and I think that that's part of it. I think people don't want to face things that they don't truly understand or are at peace with. No, my light. We were on a roll, guys. We're back. All right, so as I was saying, I just think that this movie really brings to light a lot of heavier topics that a lot of movies do touch on, but in a much lighter tone and atmosphere and storyline that makes it a lot more palatable for people, I feel. So that was something that I really enjoyed about it. So overall, if you have not seen it and you're on the fence about going to see it at the movie theater, I am begging you to please go watch this movie, because if we do not support it, this movie is not gonna do well, and then they're gonna stop making us spooky cute movies like this. So just please go support it. That's all I have to say about it. If you haven't seen it yet, if you're ready to stick around for spoilers, let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay, so if you're still watching, that means that you have already seen the film or you're willing to see all the spoilers. So I'm gonna have a lot to share about what I loved about this film, but before we do that, I do have a little secret to share, and that is that I definitely felt like the movie fell short in some aspects. And I want to talk about them because it's important to be authentic and honest about these things, and just because there are imperfections with a piece does not mean that it takes away the overall greatness and enjoyment that something has to offer, in my opinion. So for me, the biggest problem with this film was the writing just fell short for me, in my opinion. I had very high expectations because of how much I love Jennifer's body. I think that a lot of people had very high expectations and just expected a lot out of this film. First and foremost, I do feel like I was right about something with the marketing, and that's that the marketing did not match the actual storyline of this film. I even wrote down, one of the movie posters says, if you can't meet your perfect boyfriend, make him. And again, even when I was reading you guys the summary from IMDb, it says, love story about a teenager and her crush who happens to be a corpse. This movie is not about Lisa Frankenstein being in love with her monster. It is about her trying to get through life, and I think use the monster as a coping mechanism, as a friend, to help her get through the final grief stage, I think. And she's completely oblivious to the fact that he's in love with her, and she's actually chasing another guy. Like, this movie is not a, like, Lisa Frankenstein is making her boyfriend the way the marketing makes it out to be. It's more so like the monster helps Lisa Frankenstein mourn and come full circle through her grief and gain confidence, and then somehow she finally realizes at the end that she loves him. So for me, the marketing did not match what this film actually was. I also felt like the way the monster actually came to life just made absolutely no sense. Like, I kept waiting at some point during the movie for them to explain how he actually came to life. Like, I'm sorry, but a bolt of lightning doesn't cut it for me. Like, I wanted actual Dr. Frankenstein vibes from this, and there was none of that really happening, other than when Lisa started to, like, put his body parts back and use the tanning bed, which I did find very clever, but again, it was just like, where was the actual, like, storytelling in this, you know? And then alongside that, I also felt like Lisa's character just needed a lot more development. Throughout the movie, they mentioned several times how she was quiet forever after her mom was murdered, about how she's weird and she's an outcast. And to me, it's just lazy storytelling that they have to keep reminding people of these things versus showing them very clearly. Like, had they not talked about the fact that she was quiet, I didn't catch on to that. And I even paid close attention the second time watching the film to really see, like, is it just me or is it not very clear? And second time around, even knowing, I was like, no, I don't think it was clear enough that she wasn't very social or didn't talk. And also the way she looked, like, I'm sorry, but she still looked gorgeous and she didn't look like an outcast or reject, in my opinion. And I didn't grow up in the 80s, but I just felt like there was a lot more opportunity for them to, like, lean into, like, the goth or alternative look for her earlier on, and then having her come to life, like, more colorful once she gains that confidence versus the opposite. Like, to me, it was just like reversed. Like, what happened here? Like, was she goth all along? Like, this to me screams like outcast, because we've been outcasts our entire lives for dressing this way, right? But in the movie, we have it reversed where she owns the goth look more because that's how her monster dresses her, you know? So that was definitely for me just like, come on, what is going on? And then alongside that as well, I just felt like her evolution happened way too quickly, like literally overnight, just because he threw this outfit at her, which, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm totally vibing so much that I'm like, okay, I see you, I get it, I get where the confidence comes from. But for me, it was just like, for a girl to have gone through the traumatic experience she has, have all of this like social anxiety, it just didn't click to me that she got confident overnight, especially because, again, she's not in love with this monster. So there's like no backstory or emotional building to me that makes it like, oh, she got this confidence because he makes her feel beautiful or she feels amazing because of him. None of that happened. It was just like, oh, the monster came to life. She's scared of him. Oh, wait, no, she's not. He dresses her and she shows up to school, this like whole new ghoul. And for me, that was just not enough. I needed a little bit more, you know? I promise there were great things I loved about this. I just wanted to get all of the like constructive criticism out of the way. Let's see. And I think the last thing that I just wanted more of was the women empowerment in this film. I had really high expectations because I knew this was coming from the writer of Jennifer's Body, which is iconic for women. It's like a staple in the horror industry, but we didn't get that. I felt like everything that happened was very subtle. There were like some great things and surprises that I was like, wow, you never see that talked about in movies, like the massage wand that she's gifted or the protection method that is showcased, especially because that was just so like outdated. I kind of didn't even know what it was at first. But for me, it was just like a lot of stuff that was very like, how could I say it? Not like high level, but very like, you really have to stretch to make it a women empowerment film, in my opinion, when you have other movies like Barbie, and I could go on about other movies. I'm not going to go on about that. But what I'm saying is it just isn't clearly a women empowerment film the way I was expecting it to be, especially from this writer. But again, I did like some of the parts that they use as far as like how all girls experience being taken advantage of and having, I know at least every girl I've spoken to has had a friend that betrays them and takes the boy that they are in love with at the time, you know? So for me, it was just very at face value as far as like how much women empowerment really went into the writing of this. If I missed any of it, please let me know in the comments because I would love to know more about it, but I just didn't feel like it hit the mark I was expecting it to. But like I said, there were also things that I really loved about this film. If not, I would not have seen it a second time and I wouldn't be here fangirling with you ghouls. So first and foremost, like I said, I absolutely loved the set design, the costume design, and the music. Like for me, the music just like was everything about it. And I wrote my notes almost in order of the film. So first off, of course, the opening scene where she's like carving the logo, her name out, was so cool. I really loved that. And I immediately, like as soon as I saw her in the graveyard, I was like, okay, this movie is definitely a love letter to spooky girls. And it took me back to my early YouTube watching days with Graveyard Girl. Have you guys watched Graveyard Girl? Leave a comment down below if you guys have ever watched Graveyard Girl. If you haven't, you need to go check her out. Bunny is the best, but she is like the OG spooky girl of YouTube. Like there is no spookier girl than Bunny because she was doing it before it was cool. She was hanging out in graveyards before it was cool. She is just a total vibe. And for me, like watching that scene was just like, oh, Graveyard Girl, Bunny, like whoever wrote, or we know who wrote this movie. I was like, deep down, I think Diablo Cody knows about Graveyard Girl because like, how could you not? It was just so perfect. Like I really loved that about it. And then I really loved going to see it a second time because I noticed something that I did not appreciate the first time around. So when the movie first opens up, the opening scene is taking you through like the monster's life and how he dies. And that scene is him sitting at a bench. And then if you watch all the way through the movie, of course, you see that it ends with him reading to her on that same bench. So I thought that that was really, really cool to see it like a perfect bookend to the movie of him by himself to being with his bride, which is so cute.
so cute.
I will say too that I felt like the first time I saw the film, I was really upset about the fact that like it didn't know what it wanted to be. I was like, this movie would have been so much better if they had gone all in on the horror. But then the second time I saw it, I think because I wasn't like, what is going on? I thought that she was going to bring him to life, but she's not bringing him to life. Like, why did he come to life? Once I got past all of those things, seeing it the second time around, I really appreciated it for what it was, and I no longer feel that way. I do feel like if they had gone all the way in on horror, this would have been a bigger hit because it would have appealed to the male audience. But I really love what it has become. I think it's going to be a cult classic for spooky girls. I already know that so many of you have used this movie as like a mother-daughter date. So for me, like, I really love what it is. But I think for me, it's like accepting that like this is all it's gonna be. I hope I'm wrong and hope it explodes and we get a Lisa Frankenstein too, because we need a bride of Frankenstein. But I have a feeling like this is as far as it's gonna go. And it's because of that. I think it had potential to be very mainstream. But by not going all in on the horror, they kind of sold themselves short, if that makes sense. But like I said, I enjoyed it for what it was the second time around. Something I will say about this film, though, is that the casting was immaculate. Chef's kisses. I was blown away by how great the casting was on this. Catherine Newton did such a great job of being that, like, careless teenager, especially, like, towards the end. I think once the mom was killed, for me, that was like, what is wrong with this girl? Like, is there something wrong with this girl? Because she's just so, like, unfazed by it. Like, she just quickly goes with the flow. And she just played that part so well. And I also, my favorite scene was the scene where he plays the piano and she sings the song, Can't Fight This Feeling Anymore. She does such a great job of being, like, so oblivious to the fact of him falling in love with her and, like, being in love with the music. So she just did such a great job of balancing, like, the awkwardness, but then becoming confident and then just being, like, whoosh, like, right over her head that you're just like, what is she thinking? She's crazy. Cole Sprouse, the creature, the monster, blown away by him. Like, when I heard it was Cole Sprouse, I was like, really? Jughead? Like, that's who we're getting for the creature, for the monster? But I say, like, he made this whole movie. Like, this movie would not have been what it was without him. He just did such a great job. Like, the sadness he could portray in his eyes, I was really blown away by him and impressed. Next, we have Janet. She's played by Carla Gugino. I had to look her up because I was like, wait, is she the mom from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody? Turns out she is not, but she still did an incredible job. Like, she did such a good job of playing, like, you know, that, like, horrible stepmom role. Like, she just did a really great job, and she definitely had the crazy eyes. The dad is also the, like, complacent, oblivious dad from Stranger Things. I also want to give a shout out to, what is her name? Where is she? She's not in the credit. Taffy. Lisa Soberano. She played Taffy. Taffy did such a great job. Like, the whole movie, I was literally like, I can't tell if I love you or hate you, but I love you. Like, you're so sweet. So yeah, I just thought the casting was done really well. I think that was one of the things, like, best things that this movie got right. Like I said, I love the Can't Fight This Feeling Anymore scene. Like, not gonna lie to you guys, as much as I hated on what this movie got wrong, first watch, I cried on that scene. Like, I know it's so silly, but it was so emotional. That song also has a lot of meaning for me and Rudy. So just, like, seeing it was just like, oh my God, I feel so seen as a spooky girl in love. So yeah, that scene was really good. And of course, we have to talk about the final scene where she decides to meet him in death. That scene was so beautiful. I really, really loved how they combined graphics with this movie to cover some of the more heavier adult topics. Like I said, I just think that what this movie did well was balance heavy topics in a fun, inviting atmosphere that doesn't feel too heavy for people. So for me, that's what it really got right. I really loved the peach rings, how they used the peach rings to get married. One of my favorite details of this film was the lightning bolt tattoo that he gives her. 1000% gonna get a lightning bolt tattoo at some point. You all know how much Frankenstein means to my love story. And then just the ending scene where she transforms into the Bride of Frankenstein. I was not expecting that. I think that was the most exciting part of the film for me, and that is why I'm like begging everyone to go watch the film, because I'm like, I really hope we get a Bride of Frankenstein film, even though I know it's not likely, especially because it's just this like fun take on the monsters versus like an actual horror film. Like, it would be so cool to see that and how they would build that out, especially because he can talk now and he's kind of like fully alive. And I think that's the other part that like really bothered me with this film, is that like it made sense how he kept coming back to like full life, but we've never really seen that concept, at least not that I'm aware of, where a monster is brought back and eventually starts to like look human again, even though it does remind me a lot of like Warm Bodies, but I'm talking about specific like undead monsters like Frankenstein, you know? So yeah, I just, like I said, I really loved how they connected that. You guys know I'm a big fangirl for Frankenstein and his bride, so for me that was the highlight of the film. I also really loved how they like went all in on like wrapping her in the bandages, and it just gave so many classic horror but make it 80s vibes, and I absolutely loved it. I will say that there are a ton of Easter eggs and tributes to classic horror and monsters and the 80s, but honestly your ghoul needs like a streaming version to break all of them down. So if you guys are interested in me doing something like that once it does hit streaming or it's available to own, please let me know in the comments down below. And I would also love to know what your thoughts were. Did you guys enjoy the movie? Did you have some gripes to pick with it the way I did, or did you just enjoy it for what it was? I definitely enjoyed it for what it was. I'm looking forward to binging it over and over and over again once it is available. But like I said, I wanted to be honest about how I was feeling initially about some of the storytelling and script writing in it. And of course, it's time for It's Freaking Bats, because we got to give our final review. I have gone back and forth in this one. Back and forth, back and forth. What do? I don't know. I will admit, I don't think this is a 5-star or 5-bat movie. I think there were a lot of things wrong with it, or opportunities for growth, I should say. But I also don't think it was horrible, because for me, if I enjoy a movie and I have fun and I want to watch it again, then for me, that is a great movie. And I felt things. Like I said, I cried, I laughed. Like, I did think there were a lot of funny, clever lines in it. I was smitten over the creature. I felt so many things. So I think I'm going to give it a 3.5, because for me, a 3 is, it was okay. And it was not just okay to me. It's also not a 4, because a 4 is like, oh, this movie was great. It just had this like one thing wrong with it. So I'm going with the 3.5. I don't think I ever do like half bats, but here we are. So yeah, I would love to know what your ratings are for this film. And I would also love to know if I have convinced you to watch it and you're like a rebel and watch the spoilers even though you haven't seen it yet, because you guys are crazy sometimes. But yeah, I had so much fun fangirling with you guys. I am so excited for all of the spooky pop culture we have to look forward to this year. Let me know what you're most excited about. I can't even keep track at this point, honestly. I am holding my breath for Hocus Pocus 3, honestly, because I'm curious, more curious than anything, to see what happens with it, because I don't have the highest hopes. Like, I'm like, are you guys really gonna stick to what you said and not bring the sisters back anymore? But also, how are you gonna have a movie without the sisters? I'm all over the place on it. I am excited about Wednesday just to see like where that goes, but if I'm being honest, I think I got a little like burned out on Wednesday, so I'm waiting till closer to the premiere to rewatch the first season. Ghostbusters, super excited for. That's always really fun. What else? I don't know. The list goes on. And of course, Beetlejuice 2, I might as well just wear this outfit to it as well. But yeah, anyway, this has gone on long enough. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure fangirling with you guys. And until next time, sending you golden kisses. Bye!
I'm sorry, but I'm just thinking of the right words to say. I know they don't